Number 1. The Playground. When I was about 13 years old, I began having these strange bouts of insomnia. It carried on for years afterwards. So around that age, I then began slipping out of the house and going for walks when I wasn't sleeping. Honestly, it never really helped me sleep when I got back home. However, if I'm laying down and trying to go to sleep, it can be one of the most frustrating things in the world. So I began doing other things instead. The town that I grew up in was sort of known more for being a retirement town. It fell asleep pretty early. There was also a curfew for anyone under the age of 17. I didn't really care about curfews, though. I was never approached by the police even once in the many walks I had taken at night, and I rarely, if ever, came across any other people at all. And when I was 16, I lay down for bed one summer night. I knew right when I laid down, however, that sleep was not coming for me. I still allowed myself to toss and turn for a few hours, but eventually I had to admit to myself that I wasn't going to get to sleep, and I got up and got dressed to go out for a walk. A lot of times, I cut through parks and walked through the woods. This night, as I was walking into a playground, I noticed I was not alone. A teenage guy and a girl were on the merry-go-round and seemed to be making out. I didn't want to bug them, though, so I decided to walk on the perimeter of the park, rather than go through it. I mean, I knew if I was kissing a girl in the park, I would have been much happier if no one interrupted us. I think I walked around town for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Although I didn't really feel tired yet, I did finally decide that I needed to head home. It was really hot outside, and at least I would feel better if I was sitting in an air-conditioned room. So I headed back the way that I had come. When I got back to the playground, I immediately looked over at the merry-go-round. I was curious whether or not those two teens were still making out, but I noticed that the guy was gone. The girl was there, though. She was sitting on the merry-go-round, looking aimlessly away from me. I looked around to see if the guy had maybe just left. If he had, then maybe I would be able to see him. But he wasn't. This time, I just decided to cut through the park. I wasn't interrupting two kids making out, it was just her. So I walked through the park. Honestly, I really didn't think much about her, until I began to get closer to her. She never raised her head up even once. She didn't turn around. I mean, if you were sitting in the park on a merry-go-round in the middle of the night by yourself, I think that the very moment you heard someone walking, you would turn around and see who it was. And there was no way, especially when I began walking on the sand part of the playground, that she didn't hear me. As I walked closer, and she still hadn't moved, I began to get a little worried. I thought she might be in deep thought, and I'd give her the shock of her life if I just walked up to her. So I tried to warn her that I was walking by. "Hey, enjoying the park?" I said, as I walked by. She didn't respond. She didn't even move. There wasn't even a slight jump to show me that she had heard me. This worried me like it would, of course, have worried anyone. I took a few steps toward the merry-go-round. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked. Still, I got no response. My heart was pounding, and about 1,000 thoughts went through my mind. But the most prevalent one was that she was hurt in some way, maybe at the hands of her boyfriend. I looked around in all directions to see if I could find him, but I couldn't. I could hear this little voice in my head telling me to walk away, but if she was hurt, I would never be able to live with myself. I slowly walked around to the side of the merry-go-round that she was sitting on. Each step made me nervous, but finally I was facing her. I tried saying hello to her, but she didn't move. Her head was hanging down, though. Right at that moment, I thought she was dead. Hell, I knew she was dead. I reached out to see if she was alive, and right then, she quickly raised her head and looked at me. Someone grabbed me from behind and put me in a headlock. "Go through his pockets," I heard a male voice behind me say. I tried kicking, trying to resist. The girl in front of me took a knife out of her pocket and held it right at my crotch. Kick me even once, and you're going to lose a few things that are probably very important to you, she warned. I immediately stopped resisting. She went through my pockets, taking my wallet and my house keys out of them. She also took my watch off my wrist. The next thing I knew, I felt a sharp and agonizing pain in my side, and I was being pushed forward towards the merry-go-round, hitting my head on it. Blacking out is a weird thing. I think until it happens to you, you can't really understand what it could be like. But it seemed like it went on forever. I felt I was somewhat aware that I existed, almost like a dream. But I wasn't able to think. My next memory was opening my eyes in a hospital bed. At the exact moment, I didn't really know what to think. I didn't know who I was, what had happened, and why I was in a hospital bed. So I cried a little bit out of frustration. And when a nurse came to check on me, things slowly began coming back to me about my walk and the attack. I had been stabbed twice in the side, but fortunately no internal organs were damaged. I did have a concussion from my head hitting the merry-go-round, though. And here's the weird thing, though. The two that attacked me, they were picked up by a police officer, for curfew of all things. And that's when he noticed the boy had blood on him. He also had the knife and my belongings on him, which was more than enough to draw the conclusion that I had been attacked. I was found rather quickly. I healed pretty good. I have a nasty couple of scars and some psychological damage. Both my attackers spent a short time in jail, but mostly were given long periods of probation. I never saw them again and don't care to, actually. It sucks that they drew me in by luring me to attempt to do a good deed. And some people are awful. Number 2. Friend attempt. This happened to me when I was really young. Even when I was as young as I can remember being, I've always felt that I should try to make friends with people who don't really have many friends. It was always important to me to not see people be lonely. And there was once a time when I couldn't bring myself to be friends with someone, and it had a freaky outcome. When I was 12, we got a new kid at school. He was a scrawny, pale kid who always wore black and had his hair slicked back. I could tell immediately that he wasn't the sort of kid who was going to be out trying to make friends. He didn't talk to anyone at all, and he just kept to himself. His name was Alex. Alex was a natural target for bullies, or so you would think. He was only bullied one time, and when the bully turned his back on Alex, Alex had jumped on his back and bit a piece of the bully's ear off. He was suspended for a while, but when he came back, no one ever bullied him again. Alex and I were partners for a school project. He wasn't very talkative, but I tried to relate to him. I just wanted to help bring him out of his shell. And maybe there was someone down in there that could make friends. Well, I did succeed in this, actually. After a few days of working together, Alex began talking to me. He revealed to me that he knew he seemed a bit weird to others. He had lost his older brother a few years before, and it had taken a toll on him. So he sort of retreated into himself. But he seemed to like me because I reminded him of his brother. Alex got into some pretty dark stuff, though. Most boys our age watch scary movies and stuff, but he was really obsessed with real crime. He would talk about actual killings, serial murderers, and things like that. And not just casually. He talked about it all the time. Whenever I tried to change the subject, it would inevitably be steered back to talk about the dark and demented things he was interested in. Despite the darkness and weirdness, I actually really did like the guy. We even began hanging out together after the project was over with. However, one day, after we'd been friends for a couple months, he began talking about this girl named Kylie who was in our class. At first I had thought it was neat that my friend had a crush on a girl, but after a while, he revealed to me that he really didn't have a crush on her at all. He would start saying freaky things like, I wonder how deep I'd have to cut her to get her to scream, and even some very much more disturbing things that I will not repeat here. It was then that I began to believe this kid might have deeper problems than I had originally thought. I started avoiding Alex after that day. I was too scared that he was actually getting to a point where he would wonder if his little fantasies could become true. I would tell him things like I had to get home because my mom wanted me home early, and things like that. However, after a significant amount of avoidance, he obviously knew that I was avoiding him, and he quit trying to get in contact with me. I won't lie, I felt bad about it. We had been friends after all. But it's hard to be friends with someone who you're worried might hurt someone else. I hadn't talked to Alex for about a month, and he didn't try to talk to me at all. However, when I was walking home from school one afternoon, I saw him several times. He was walking behind me, but also behind another group that was behind me. I didn't really know if he was following me, but by the time I had gotten to my street, he was nowhere to be seen. That night, I went to bed rather late. I fell asleep in an instant, as is usually the case with me. I usually sleep like a rock too, but that night, something woke me up. I sleep on my side. I opened my eyes and noticed it was still dark. So I decided maybe I just needed to flip over on my other side and fall back asleep. As soon as I flipped over, my eyes turned into saucers when I saw Alex was in my room. He was sitting in a corner across from my bed. I assumed he was looking at me, but there wasn't enough light for me to tell. I just began screaming out of terror. Alex didn't move though. My dad came running into the room and turned the light on, and that's when he noticed Alex sitting over in the corner, staring at my bed, playing with his pocket knife. He got between us and told me to run to his bedroom and lock the door. I did, and my mom called the police. The police came, and when they did, Alex simply sat there in the corner. They picked him up and removed him from the house. He never made a move on me or my father. I never saw Alex again after that day. His parents took him from the school, and they moved shortly after. I never got to know what he was doing in my room, or if he had been there to try to hurt me or scare me. Maybe he was just trying to scare me. Maybe he wanted to be friends again. I really don't know. I sort of wish I did. Number 3. Backyard. I remember back when I was growing up, my family lived on various military bases, but one of them really stood apart from the others. We had a huge backyard. I guess it wasn't really considered our backyard, but there was a huge field behind our houses, and it stretched back a few hundred yards, until there was a fence and a forest behind that fence. My best friend lived a couple of houses down. My dad bought me a tent and tried to encourage me to sleep out in the backyard with my best friend Tim. It didn't take much to convince me. He taught me how to put up the tent, and we put it very far away from the house. In fact, we were much closer to the fence than we were to the house. He bought us some snacks and a flashlight, and we had some comic books and stuff to keep us occupied. But it was the final time in the tent that really made an impression on me. It was late in the summer. Tim and I had done this so often that I really didn't even think about it anymore. It was really late at night. We were telling ghost stories, and we heard this weird noise coming from outside the tent, all the way back in the forested area. I don't really know how to describe it. It was like an ungodly howl. Well, one thing that my mom didn't know was that my dad had given me a pellet gun earlier in the summer, and I quickly grabbed it. Tim told me we should go out and see what it was, and that I didn't really want to do, but he accused me of being a coward, and I eventually gave in. We crept out of the tent. I was brandishing the gun, ready to shoot the damn thing if need be. It was just a pellet gun, but it could still be scary, we reasoned. Tim and I exited the tent, and we walked over towards the fence. It was so dark there, we really weren't able to see much. After looking around, Tim began to get frustrated that nothing was happening, so he yelled out, "Hey, who the hell is back there?" At first, there was nothing, and then a form of a man emerged out of the forest. He moved towards the gate. I put up the gun to protect ourselves and told the guy I had a gun. He paused only for a moment before moving forward again. I then pulled the trigger and shot at him with a pellet. This was a major mistake though, because it revealed our gun was not dangerous. Tim and I, terrified, began running towards the house. The fence was really high and would require quite a climb to get over. We didn't look back to see if he was following us though. We ran as quick as we could and didn't look back until we got to the house. I woke up my dad and told him what happened. He called the military security. I expected nothing to come out of it, of course, but I was really wrong. The police found a child in the woods, beaten and bloody. He was a kid who had been kidnapped by his father from his mother. His screams were the sounds we heard. The father fled, but thankfully he was caught and brought to justice. But I have never been able to sleep out in a tent ever again. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. I hope you like these stories, and I'm feeling a lot better than I have been. I'm hoping to do a lot of good work going forward. Thank you for all the kind words on the previous video. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the subscribe button below. Make sure to also hit the notification bell, so you know right away when the new video comes out. Print versions of the stories are available on the Killer Orange Cat subreddit, and if you want to submit your own original story, you can on the subreddit, or by sending me an email to the address provided in the description. Please leave me a comment and share the video if you liked it. But for now, please make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.